Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I wanted to do some meditations today because let me tell you how my day started. I've had a good day today, but I'm very tired. I don't know what is going on. I don't know if it's the weather. I just am like, I feel like I have an anchor around me that's just like dragging me down. Do you ever have days like that? Like I'm not necessarily like unhappy or anything like that. I just feel like I'm being dragged down. I just feel like so slow and tired today, and I had therapy today, and so it's just been, it's like today has just been, it feels like it's been a long day, you know, and but a long day just filled with not a whole lot. And so I was trying to get inspired earlier, so I was sitting out here and I was drinking my coffee and I was like reading some meditations and, you know, doing my prayers and all that kind of stuff, and I like pick out, you know, randomly like 4 or 5 different meditation books to read from every single day. And so I was, you know, it just kind of depends. In all honesty, I have so many meditation books at this point. I mean, I have my mom's meditation book set. She had the positive affirmation books, like the Melody Beatty ones, you know, like these. I have 12-step ones, I have ones for confidence, I have ones for self-esteem, I have, you know, ones for men, ones for women. I have all different kinds of these meditation positive affirmation books. And some I like more than others, definitely. I mean, these are absolutely my 2 favorites in the entire world. The Melody Beatty, The Language of Letting Go, and the Melody Beatty, The Journey to the Heart. These are absolutely my 2 favorites. But, like, depending on what I'm working through, you know, I have a couple that are on grief, and so when I feel like I'm kind of, like, struggling grieving, I'll break those out and things like that. If I, you know, am, like, wake up and it's not, like, I'm feeling the greatest or whatever, like, I'll break out the Book of Positive Quotations by Linda Picone, and I have a couple other ones that are, like, the Sark ones that are really focused on positivity and things like that. So that's kind of what I do. Well, today, I was just kind of, like, whatever, and I just picked out, like, I don't know, like 4 random meditation books, and I sat out here and drinking my coffee and I was doing my prayers and all that kind of stuff, and I got to the meditation books. It was like each one that I read, I was like, okay, I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't like insightful. It was just kind of like meh, you know. And so I put it to the side, picked up the next one. I was like, okay, this one's gonna be the one that's speaking to me, right? Because usually there's some meditation or positive affirmation that I read every single day, or something that I hear, you know, that like really means something to me. And so I read the next one and I was like, eh. And it was like that on all 4 of them. And I was like, what is going on? Am I just supposed to turn my brain off today? I do think some days we're just supposed to turn our brains off and not think too much. Maybe today is the day. I don't know. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a Peterisms video. I'm going to get into the meditations of Melody Beatty, and hopefully she will bring us, oh, you know, I reached for this book first, so let's go for this one. So hopefully she will bring us some wisdom today. So let's get into Journey to the Heart by Melody Beatty, Daily Meditations on the Path to Freeing Your Soul, or to Freeing Your Soul. All right, March 6th. I went to May first, so that must, not May 1st, but in the middle of May, so that must mean I'm ready for May. Okay, March 6th, here we are. Ooh, let your sexuality be connected to your heart. Oh, okay. Well, let's go back. I don't know that that's what I see. This is like, one of them that I was talking about that I read today was about like work. One was about money. Like, I feel like I want some like wisdom from the universe, okay? And I feel like my sexuality is already connected to my heart. So let's go back and, well, you know what? Let's just read this one. Maybe this is the one that we're supposed to read today. Okay. He was a handsome man, an actor. Something's happened to me lately, he shared. It's about my sexuality. I used to be sexual when and where I felt like it, no more. And it's not connected to fear of disease, although that's certainly a concern. What happened to me is that my sexuality has become connected to my heart. Let go of sexual shame. Embrace your sensuality. Value your senses, all of them. Touch, smell, taste, seeing, and hearing. Value your other senses too, your intuition, your spirituality, your spiritual reaction to the world that dances around you. Open up to colors, textures, scents, and sounds. Open up to your energy, all of it, including your sexuality. Let yourself see that all expressions of your love and your being are beautiful. Let yourself learn to express and receive love in sensual ways, ways that work for you. Be done with sexual shame. Trust your body and what it likes. We aren't disconnected parts. Open up. Discover your sexuality. Let it be connected to your heart. You know, this is actually probably a pretty good meditation for me to speak on because this is kind of like in my life gone up and down, up and down. And I think it's probably something that a lot of people can relate to, but we don't often talk about. The words sexuality and sensuality for me mean a lot of different things. You know, when, as a person that's gay and part of the LGBTQIA plus community, when I hear the word sexuality, I already think of it as like an identifier. Like, I identify as a gay male, right? Like, I already think of that as a identifier. Sexuality is an identifier. And that's not what she's using it here. She's talking about your sexual aura, your sexuality, and who you are as a sexual being and things like that, right? Which I think, in all honesty, was a lot easier for me when I was young, and in all honesty, drunk, you know? It's one of the things that we don't talk a lot about in sobriety. You would think that, you know, I'm somebody that, like, will bring up those topics and whatever, but you would think that we would talk a lot more about, like, you know, sex and sobriety, or sex before sobriety, and how we used our bodies to manipulate people for drugs or alcohol and things like that. There isn't as much talk about that. It's like there's still, like, this shame and this stigma that goes along, you know, with sexuality and sexual behavior and things like that. I know that before I was using, you know, I was going to say a very sexual person. I've never been like a hugely sexual person, and part of it when I was using was because I was too drunk or too wasted that it just, you know, I didn't have a lot of those opportunities. But that's not to say that I didn't have my fair share of one-night stands and stuff like that, and this is nothing that I'm embarrassed or ashamed to talk about. You know, it's part of my life, it's part of my histories, and it's part of some of the really good times that I had in my life. And, you know, when I got sober, well, I will say this, that coming out at 18 and having my entire life previous to that repressed these feelings of being gay because there was all this shame and guilt that came along with it, and I've been bullied over that. When you're bullied over who you are as a sexual being or who you're attracted to, you immediately feel like there's something wrong with that, right? And so when I came out and I'm drinking and I'm using it, it's like I'm liberated, whatever. But like, when I think of myself in those moments, in all honesty, okay, when I think about myself as a sexual being using, I think of myself like in a bar with no shirt on, like on the dance floor, just like dancing. That's who I think of myself as a sexual being, right? Not necessarily with somebody doing the deed, but by myself, feeling free enough of myself to be this free sexual being that is expressing my body, that is in love with my body. And I was, like, I mean, you know, like I was, you know, and hoping that other people were too. Then I got sober, and I didn't really, you know, I got into a relationship right after I got sober and got out of treatment, got into another one right after that one, and so it wasn't that I wasn't having sex with people, because I was, but I was, and I know that there are people out there that are like, you know, like, this is too much information. What? I'm a 51-year-old man talking about the fact that I've had a sex life. I mean, come on, let's not be prudes, right? This is something that I think we all talk about, we all relate to. Maybe we don't talk about enough, I don't know. I think that our sexual being and our sensuality and those parts of us that are sensual and sexual, like, I don't think we talk about it and express it enough when it's a huge part of who we are, and it's not just about, you know, who we're having sex with or what we're doing or whatever. And I think, you know, that's the one thing for me with being gay that, you know, when through the years when people would ask me questions that weren't very aware of, you know, like didn't know a lot of gay people or whatever, and they would ask me questions, and they weren't like inappropriate questions, but there were times that, you know, people that I worked with, you know, would say things to me like, are you the pitcher or the catcher? And I always kind of wondered, like, why does it always go to that with gay people? Like, are you the pitcher or are you the catcher? Like, you wouldn't go to, like, one of your good friends and, you know, I mean, maybe you would. I would have probably back in our 20s, like when I was in my early 20s. But, you know, today you wouldn't ask, you know, like in a work environment, you wouldn't ask your coworker, like, you know, and I think that's kind of like a cutesy way of asking somebody how they identify in a sexual role, to say, are you a, you know, a pitcher or a catcher? And I think that for the curiosity for a lot of heterosexual people out there that aren't very aware of the LGBTQIA plus community, I think it's not necessarily are you the pitcher or the catcher, but like what role do you play in a relationship? Because I think that a lot of people, even in today in 2024, they have, this is going to be a long conversation, I can tell, they have to put these identifiers on it, right? And so one role is more feminine and one role is more masculine. It's like you know, we have a hard time understanding two men having, you know, two feminine roles or two masculine roles, or however we perceive those stereotypically in a relationship, or two women with two masculine roles or two feminine roles, how we identify those stereotypically, you know? And today, with gender and how it is across the board, you know, and people identifying in all different kinds of ways, you know, and being gender fluid, it's like, what really is a gender role? But those were questions that I faced a lot from coworkers of mine, from a supervisor of mine, you know, and wasn't offended by it. You know, but I don't think it was really that they were so wondering, like, what I was doing as it was, like, what's the real question you're asking, right? But I do think it's interesting that, you know, like, through the years, I can only speak to my experience, when people would ask me questions that weren't in the gay community, it would always went to a sexual place. Like, they thought we had, like, some leather dungeon in our basement where we were all chained up, you know, having, like, you know, all that kind of sex and stuff like that, right? I wish it were really that exciting, I wish to tell you. I'm sure there are some people out there that do have those things, you know. I don't. I never have. But I'm sure that there are some people out there that do, right? I don't know that that's anybody else's right to know those things. I think if somebody's open to telling you those things, then fine. But, like, I think it's interesting when, you know, ever, like, having conversations with heterosexual people that are curious, but they don't know how to ask those questions. It always kind of goes to, like, a sexual place, right? And so I've always kind of had this internal fight within myself to, like, who am I as a sexual human being? Who am I as a sensual human being? I can remember having this conversation. My mom and I had very, you know, intellectual conversations, talked about sex. We never talked about, I don't even have these conversations with my best friend, Tanya Jean. I mean, I don't think we've ever, like, we'll talk about, like, you know, making love and things like that, but I don't think we've ever had intimate conversations about things that I've done or she's done to our husbands and things. We don't need to have those conversations. Those conversations aren't necessary, you know? And that's just how I feel about that, right? But, like, my mom and I would have very intellectual conversations about sensuality and sexuality. Not gritty details, but, you know, conversations. And I can remember she said to me, and it would have been shortly after she got sober, 2 or 3 years, so she would have been about my age or, you know, 2 or 3 years older because she got sober at 51. And I remember she said to me at one point, she said, you know, your sensuality and who you are as a sexual being really never goes away. She was like, you still feel the same way that you do at 20. It ebbs and flows. You have periods where you feel more sexual and less sexual. And she goes, but it kind of ebbs and flows. You never really feel a lot different at 20, but all of your life experiences kind of affect that. You're still a erotic, sensual person, right? And I think that's so true. I think as you get older, it's like, and you get, you know, comfortable in relationships, you know, like, people ask me all the time when we do couples Q&As, like, how do you and Alex keep the passion alive? You have to work really hard at it, okay? Because in all honesty, at the end of the day, it's easier to put your pajamas on and watch TV. That's just the truth. I think that physical intimacy is just one part of a relationship. I have to tell you, having been in a relationship that ended up not being physically intimate towards the end of it, well, the last two, you know, that I do think that physical intimacy is a very important part, you know? And all the time when I hear couples that say to me, and this is just my perspective, I'm just sharing my perspective, but when couples say to me, like, oh, we're not intimate, we haven't been intimate in years, we don't really need to do that anymore, I'm always like, but don't you want to? Like, I look at my husband across the room and I'm like, we've been together 15 years, this is a long time, and I'm like, damn, my husband is hot, my husband is fine, I'm glad that is my husband, you know, like, yes. You know, and, you know, I was watching The Real Housewives of Miami, and Larsa Pippen's talking about how they're having sex 5 times. Now, come on now, all right? I don't think everybody's doing it 5 times a day. Maybe not even 5 times a week. Maybe not even once a week. But is the desire there? You know, when I got out of my last relationship, one of the things that I was looking for in my new relationship was that I wanted to look across my partner at dinner forever and be like, I cannot wait to get home. And that doesn't always mean just getting down to the nitty gritty. That means maybe holding hands or kissing or holding each other, you know, or being intimate. Intimacy is not just about penetration. Let's just call it for what it is. It's just not about that. It's just not about the deed, you know? It's about intimacy. It's about touch. It's about feelings. It's about all of that kind of stuff, right? It's about smiling at somebody or winking at them across the room. All of that is sensuality and sexuality. All of that is, you know? How my husband smells when he wears a certain cologne that turns me on, you know, or when he wears a certain outfit, or when I see him salsa dancing or whatever. All of that is part of that, you know, and I want that. I want that with my husband until the day that I die. But for me to be able to have that with him or with anybody else, and I think this is one of the things we don't talk about when we talk about intimacy dying in a relationship, what really has to first happen is the death of intimacy with ourselves. And I can tell you that as I got older and I gained weight and things like that, that was a huge major effect in our relationship, but really on myself, where I didn't even really want to stand in front of a mirror and look at myself nude or naked, because I was just so ashamed of who I have become and whatever. I wasn't proud of my body, you know, and I had to fall in love with my body looking like how I felt like it looked at that time. And I did, and then I've lost weight, and I continue trying to lose weight, right? And I'm not trying to lose weight so that I can fall in love with my body when I'm 30 pounds thinner. I'm in love with my body now. I can look in the mirror right now and be naked and be like, hey, okay, it may not be what everybody else wants to see, but I've done a lot of work to get there, right? Because what I've realized is that sensuality is how you move in and out of clothes. You know, I've seen some people that are the most sensual people in the entire world, when they are moving, you know, across to a room and whatever, and I'm like, damn, like, they are hot to try, you know? And I just realized I just deleted this video that I filmed before this. I don't know why, just in the middle of all this. I filmed this whole video of showing my plants from that made it through the winter. So I'm going to have to go film that video, refilm that video. But I came out here and I like restarted the memory card. But anyway, but you know, I have seen people that are fully clothed, you know, coats and everything. And I'm like, they are sexy. They are sensual. You know, and sensuality for us is smells and touch and, you know, all of that. And what I had to realize was I had to get in tune with all that about myself. I had to love myself. Before I could imagine somebody looking at me in a sensual or sexual way, I had to be able to look at myself that way. It's not just about loving yourself until somebody can, you know, letting other people love you until you can love yourself, or loving yourself so you can love other people. It's about falling in love with yourself, all parts of yourself, you know? And that was hard for me when I was heavier, you know, and I'm still heavy. That's hard for me, you know? But I've done a lot of work to get there. And there are things that I do that make me feel good about myself. You know, there's a certain pair of jeans that I wear. When I wear those, I feel sexy, you know? And it's about all that. It's about feeling in ourselves. And whether you have a partner or you have no partner, okay, you're still a sexual being. Whether you're having sex or you're not having sex, you're still a sexual, sensual being, right? And so it's all about, embracing that. Embracing scent and smell, and, you know, or scent and smell is the same thing. Scent and touch and the way that we walk and the way that we dance and what music we listen to and all of that. Embracing all of that, you know? And falling in love with ourselves all over again. It doesn't take a partner to do that. You don't have a half a partner to be a sexual person. Literally and figuratively, you don't, right? But in the feeling, okay? I don't ever want that feeling, whether I'm 51 or 21 or 81 or 101. I don't ever want that feeling of mine to go away. I think sometimes as we get older, you know, it doesn't mean that we have to wear, you know, booty shorts and a tank top. If that's what you want to do, go do it. But that doesn't mean that we have to do that to feel sexual, you know? You can feel sexual in a tuxedo or in an old pair of pajamas. I think there's a connotation to that word that almost kind of sounds dirty, right? But the reality is we're sexual beings, and really what it's about is feeling the most alive that we can feel with our heart. You know? How do we respond to the world? Are we in love with the world? Are we in love with the world around us? Do we allow ourselves, our body, to move freely in the world? You know, I know... Maybe I don't know this. Maybe I'll learn this. You know, I know I'm not one of them hippy-dippy people that's going to be naked rolling around in a field somewhere, okay? But that's only one way to express, you know, your sexuality and stuff like that. You know, sometimes when I'm walking down the street at night and I'm listening to, you know, some like disco from the 70s and I'm walking like I feel like I look fantastic. And in that moment, I am like, listen, I'm the most sensual being in the entire world. You can't tell me otherwise. So it's work. It's work we have to do, you know? But you have to have that feeling before you can have it with somebody else, or that's going to greatly affect your marriage. And so when people say to me, or your relationship, oh, we don't have sex anymore, we don't need to have that, my question's always like, don't you want to have that? But I really think the truth is that they've fallen out of love with themselves. They've fallen out of feeling like they were sexual beings, because it's hard to be a sexual being with somebody else if you can't even feel that way yourself. You know, if you feel like, I don't even want to look at myself, how the hell are you going to feel like somebody else wants to look at you, right? And so that's work that we have to do on ourselves. But, you know, like, I mean, I see 60 and 70-year-old people that I'm like, man, they still have it, you know? You think about the ad back in the day about that, what was it, the Dos Equis beer or whatever, the most interesting man in the world. I mean, he had, like, you know, was so sexy. What was he, 70, 75 at the time? I don't know. Somebody will research it and say he was 60. But, I mean, he was older, you know? There's no age limit on feeling like we're sensual beings, and there shouldn't, you know? I don't want to cut that part out of my life just because I'm getting older, you know? And we don't have to make it into this dirty thing and it be about, like, you know, it has to be about this or it has to be about that or doing this or doing that, or, you know, it has to be about the details or what you're doing. It can be a feeling that you have inside, right? That I am a sensual being that feels the senses around me in the world and is in tune with music and taste and sounds of the birds outside and winks when somebody winks at me across the room, or laughter. Laughter can be incredibly sexy, you know? So don't ever give up on yourself. Don't ever. You're worth it. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.